If you have been enjoying this wheat stitch, you're in for a treat. If you haven't tried out the stitch yet, you are also in for a really fun treat. This is a fun stitch with an easy repeat, and it has gorgeous results. Today for these stockings, we're going to be using a worsted 4-weight yarn, but I want to talk about the yarn because I actually use a different yarn for the smaller version than I did for the large version. I use the Color Theory for this one. It has a bit more flexibility and drape. And then I use the Brava worsted acrylic for the red one. They're both an acrylic yarn. They just feel slightly different, but they gauge so similar. I wanted to be able to make sure that if you wanted to go raid your stash, most worsted 4-weight yarns would work. And I do think that that is true. So for today, I'm going to be making the large size in the Color Theory yarn. I'm going to be using this caper, and that will be really nice to work up. So there's 2 sizes here. I'm going to be making the larger size. The Brava, of course, will be linked as well, and it has lots of great colorways to choose from. The nice thing about making your own stockings is you can design them for your home. So pick colorways that you already have decor in, match it to your style, or if you just want to freshen things up, go fun. You can do pinks, purples, and then, of course, the classic reds and greens. You'll also want a 4.5 millimeter hook. This is a G+. We're going to be using that today for the stockings. You'll want a yarn needle to weave in your ends, a tape measure to measure your gauge, make sure that you're on track, and scissors, of course, to cut those ends. If you want extra tags, that works well. This is a ribbon. It has a little bit of a twine burlap feel to it, but I simply took a piece of ribbon and the rivets that I have in a pack of rivets that I use for these labels and attach them on the sides for a way to hang the stocking. So let's go ahead and jump right in. This is a one-piece style construction. We're going to be working it flat, and the toe and the heel will be the only things worked in the round, but it's really, really simple. So let's get started. Now we're going to talk construction for this stocking. We're going to be working this in rows, and we're going to start by working the entire front part of the stocking all in one go. Depending on what size you are crocheting, it might be a different stitch count or width, but overall it's the same concept. We're going to be creating a long piece of fabric flat. On one side, we'll be working our cuff as we go, and then we'll be working that beautiful stitch repeat. After that, we're going to be splitting that piece of fabric into 2 so that we have place for the heel. So then we'll just be working the upper part of this with that ribbing, and then the foot part of this in that stitch repeat. And those will be worked for some rows that work out for the sizing. They'll be slightly different depending on what size you're making. Then we're going to be coming back and working the toe portion of this and half double crochet in the round. And then we'll come back and work the heel because there will be a gap here, and we'll be working that in the round in half double crochet, doing some decreasing as well. And after that, it's just embellishing and you have a gorgeous stocking. Now to get started with this festive wheat stocking, we're going to go ahead and create a slip knot and place that onto our hook. And then we are going to be chaining for the large size. We're going to chain 59. Now after chaining 59, the last chain is a turning chain. So we are going to be working in the bottom humps here, and we are going to single crochet into the second chain from the hook. And then we are going to single crochet into each chain across. So this will end up being a total of 58 single crochet stitches. And if you need to, please use stitch markers on the first stitch of the row of every single row, just so you can keep track of the rows so you don't lose your stitch count. But we won't be changing our stitch count for this section. Every single row will be a total of 58 stitches, and then we'll have our turning chain. So I'm going to complete these single crochet stitches all the way across until I have 58 single crochets. Now that we've single crocheted 58 stitches, we're going to turn our work and chain 1 for the turning chain. And now working in the back loop only for this entire row, we are going to single crochet 58 stitches. Now, if you've never worked in the back loop before, I just want to show you what you're doing. When we enter a stitch, we're entering underneath both of these strands. It kind of look like a V on the top. But we're not going to be entering through both strands. We're going to skip the front loop and only enter the back loop. That's what gives it that nice ribbing look when we're working in those back loops. So we will single crochet all 58 stitches across in the back loop only. Now that we have done row 2 of single crocheting in the back loop only, we're going to turn our work, chain 1, and then we're going to single crochet in the very first 10 stitches in the back loop only. Now after working the first 10 stitches in the back loop only, we're going to single crochet the next stitch through both loops. And now we're going to start our puff stitch repeat. This is a little bit of a modified puff stitch, so it's not as thick as your traditional one. But what we're going to do is we're going to skip the next stitch and single crochet into the next. And now we're going to go back to that skip stitch. We will yarn over, insert our hook into that skip stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. And we want to pull that loop up as high as the first loop on our hook. We want some length to that. Then yarn over and insert into the same skip stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. And now we have 5 loops on our hook. We're going to yarn over and pull through 4 of those loops, then yarn over and pull through the remaining 2 to complete that puff stitch. So let's do that repeat again. We will be skipping the next stitch and single crocheting into the next. Then we're going to go back to that skip stitch and yarn over, insert our hook, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over, insert into the same stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 4 loops, yarn over and pull through 2 loops. And that completes our repeat. So that will be skip a stitch and single crochet, work a modified puff stitch into that skip stitch. Repeat this all the way across until the very last stitch of this row. Now once we have worked to the very last stitch of this row, we will simply single crochet into that last stitch. And then we are going to turn our work. And for this row, we are going to chain 1, single crochet into that very first stitch. And now we're going to do that puff stitch repeat until the very last 11 stitches of this row. So we will skip a stitch, single crochet in the next, go back to that skip stitch and work that puff stitch, and then keep repeating until the last 11 stitches. So skip a stitch, single crochet, go back to that skip stitch and work a puff stitch. Now once we are to the last 11 stitches of this row, we are going to single crochet into the next, and then in the last 10 stitches, we will single crochet into the back loop only. Now the repeat for this is quite simple. For the next 2 rows, we will be single crocheting in the back loop only. And then the 2 rows after that repeats the rows 3 and 4 of doing those puff stitches. So it's that 4-row repeat that creates this pattern. For the size large, we will be working that 4-row repeat until we have a total of 20 rows. So keep working in that 4-row repeat until you have 20 rows and then come on back. So now we have the first 20 rows done, and the next part of this is we're going to be splitting it so that we make space for a heel. So we're only going to be working so many stitches in the next row and then turning and leaving the remaining stitches unworked, and we'll come back to those stitches later. So we're just going to be making a panel here and a panel here. That way we have space for the heel. Now for the first row of this very top section, we are going to start this row by chaining 1, and then we are going to single crochet into the back loop only of the very first 38 stitches in this row, and then we're going to stop. Now after single crocheting 38 in the back loop, we're going to turn our work. For row 2 of this top section, we will chain 1. And then we are going to single crochet in the back loop only for all 38 stitches. Now for row 3 of the top section, we are going to go back to that puff stitch repeat, but only working these 38 stitches. We still will be starting the beginning of our row by chaining 1, and then we're going to single crochet through the back loop only for the first 10 stitches. So we still want to make sure that on this section we are conscious of those ribbing stitches at the top of the stocking. Then we are going to single crochet into the next stitch, and then we will start that puff stitch repeat by skipping one, doing a single crochet, and then working a puff stitch in that skip stitch. And we will do that until the last stitch of this row. And that's going to be right here. So this is where we're stopping for this row. We're going to work until the last stitch in that puff repeat. Now when we get to that last stitch, we will single crochet into the last, turn our work, and then we are going to chain one. I like to tighten that chain down, and then we will single crochet into the first stitch, and then we're going to go into our puff stitch repeat where we skip one and work a single crochet and go back and work the puff stitch into that skip stitch. And we're going to work that until the last 11 stitches of this row. And now with the last 11 stitches, we'll single crochet one, and then single crochet in the back loop only for the remaining 10. And that's going to be our 4-row repeat for this section. So it's literally the same as what we did before. We're just doing it with less stitches. So we're going to do that 4-row repeat of those 38 stitches until we have 20 total rows for the top section. So now that we have section 1 complete, you can fasten off your yarn if you would like. If you want to grab a second ball, because it does take more than one ball of this type of yarn, you can, and you can leave this attached. I only have a small amount left here, but we'll come back to use this side again when it comes to joining. But for now, once we are done with the top section, it's time to work on the bottom section. We'll want to turn our work and have the wrong side facing us. And we are simply going to go back to the unworked stitch here, and we're going to join our yarn. And then we're going to chain one and single crochet in the back loop only for each stitch across. And this will only be 20 stitches for this bottom section. Now at the end of the row, after single crocheting in each stitch across, we're going to chain one and turn. And then we are going to repeat that. We are going to single crochet into each stitch across. Now after working rows 1 and 2, which are single crocheting in the back loop only, we're going to turn our work, and this is where we're going to do the 2 rows of the puff stitches. But we'll start by chaining one, single crocheting in the first, and then we'll start by skipping one and doing a single crochet and working a puff stitch into the skip stitch. We're going to work that all the way across until the very last stitch of the row. Now after row 3, we're going to turn our work and repeat that again for row 4. Now this is where we're just going to keep working in this pattern. We don't have the ribbing to work for this section of it. We're just working the puff stitches on those 20 stitches, but we're single crocheting in the first and the last. And we'll keep doing this repeat until we have a total of 20 rows matching this top section. So it'll just be a flap of fabric, and then we'll come on back. So now we have this piece of fabric. It has a slit in it for the heel, and we're ready to join those together. Now if you wanted to, in written instructions, I instruct to join this one and then work on this one and then join this one. So it doesn't really matter what order you join these in. We're just going to join and slip stitch them now. If you wanted to wait and slip stitch across all of them at once, you can do that as well. But we're going to go ahead and do it in these sections. So for this very first section, we are going to join our sides, and we have the wrong side facing. So the right side of the fabric has that ridge on that single crochet in the back loop only, and the wrong side is a bit more flat. However, it can be reversible if you prefer this side. So I've chained one, and then we are simply going to insert our hook into the very first stitch, and then we're going to insert our hook into the stitch on the very first row and yarn over and slip stitch those together. So we're going through the stitch on our current row, the stitch on our first row, yarning over and slip stitching together. We'll do that for each stitch along this section all the way down. And now I'm going to fold the bottom part of this stocking, and we're going to be starting at the very next stitch over here. So one stitch per join. We're doing the same thing we did before, where we enter our current row, and then we're going to go to the next unworked stitch on the first row, and we're going to slip stitch those together all the way down. So this is joining the edges, and it's going to start to look a little bit more like a stocking here into that shape. Now that we have slip stitched this together, we want to make it so that we have the right side facing out. So I'm simply going to grab this tube and flip it, folding it from wrong side facing out to right side facing out. And now we have a tube with a slit in it, which will be our heel, and we're ready to move on to starting with this toe. So what we will do for this toe is I'm going to start with a chain 1 and tighten down that chain, and then we will be slip stitching 1 slip stitch per row all the way around. So we're working in the round here. So I'm going to do the first slip stitch and then mark that with a stitch marker so that we don't lose the first stitch in the round, and then slip stitch along the edge of the next row and the next ones. So we'll be doing 1 slip stitch per row all the way around this stocking. Now this means we will have a total of 40 slip stitches because we have a total of 40 rows going on here at the end of this round. So slip stitch all the way around, 1 stitch per row, a total of 40 slip stitches for the round. Now after we've done our setup round, it's time for us to join with a slip stitch to the first stitch in this round, and then chain 1. And now we're going to half double crochet into those slip stitches all the way around. So we'll have 40 half double crochets at the end of this round. Now that we have worked round 1 all the way around by working those half double crochets, we're going to remove our stitch marker, join to the first stitch of this round, and then we're going to start round 2. And this is where we'll start doing some decreasing. So I'm going to chain 1, that does not count as a stitch, and then we're going to do a half double crochet, so working 2 stitches together, a decrease in the first 2 stitches, and then we'll mark that first stitch of the round, and then we will half double crochet in the next 3 stitches. Now, if you are working the size small, this repeat will be a different stitch count. But for the size large, this is what will repeat all the way around. So we'll do a half double crochet, 2 together, and then half double crochet into the next 3 stitches. And we will repeat that all the way around for round 2. And at the end of round 2, we will have a total of 32 stitches. And at the end of round 2, we will join to the first stitch of the round, and we're going to start round 3. For round 3, we'll chain 1, and then we're going to half double crochet 2 together again for the first of the row. So we've done a decrease, place that stitch marker, and then we're going to half double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. And that's going to be our repeat around. So that's half double crochet, 2 together, and then half double crochet in the next 2. Working that repeat all the way around for round 3, that will decrease our stitch count to 24 stitches. At the end of round 3, we will join and then go to round 4, where we will chain 1, and then we're going to half double crochet 2 together, mark that first stitch, and then half double crochet into the next. And that's our repeat around. So that's to half double crochet 2 together, and then half double crochet 1. And that will bring our stitch count for round 4 to 16 stitches. And now for our final round, for round 5, we joined at the end of round 4, then we'll chain 1, and we are going to do a half double crochet 2 together all the way around for round 5. And this is going to decrease the stitch count to 8 stitches. Now at the end of round 5, we will join with a slip stitch, and then we can fasten off this yarn, leaving a tail to close that final opening. So grab your yarn needle. To close this hole, we are going to be looping through the front loop only, so that very first part of that V that we see on the top, so the very first loop of the stitch, we're going to loop through all 8 of those all the way around, and then we'll be able to pull this closed. After going all the way around, we can simply take that tail end and pull that closed, and then we have a nice toe. Now you'll want to be sure to loop through a few more times. I like to go around again and then back the other way and then weave in that tail end to finish it off. Next, we want to work on this heel opening area. So we are going to join our yarn at one of the corners along the first row. So I will leave a long tail as well, because if there are any gaps on the corners, we can use our tail end to weave in those gaps. So I've chained one to get started, and now I'm going to slip stitch 1 stitch per row all the way around. I'm going to mark that with a stitch marker. Now for the size large, that means we have 20 rows along the bottom and 20 rows along the top. So as we slip stitch 1 stitch per row, we will end up with a total of 40 slip stitches all the way around. So it's similar to what we did with the toe. We're just doing it on the opening of the heel this time. Now a little trick you can do, I have 1 slip stitch left here, but I'm back at the corner, is we can insert to where I would be doing a slip stitch, pull up a loop, but before we slip stitch, grab another piece of loop of fabric. So you can go through the corner part of this, yarn over and pull up another loop and then slip stitch through. We haven't decreased or added any stitches. We've just only done 1 stitch, but by grabbing some of those corner stitches, it will lessen the gap that we have on the corners if you want to do that. So now that we have 40 slip stitches around, I'm going to move my stitch marker and join to that very first slip stitch of the round and chain 1. Now we're going to be decreasing a little bit differently on the heel than we did for the toe. We're going to start with a half double crochet 2 together, and then we're going to mark that stitch. And now we're going to half double crochet into the next 16 stitches. Now after half double crocheting 16, we are going to do a decrease. We're going to half double crochet 2 together. And then we will be repeating what we just did again. So what we'll do is we will, along the other side, we're going to half double crochet 2 together, half double crochet 16, and half double crochet 2 together. So we're just doing a repeat of what we just did. Now after round 1, we are going to join to that first stitch, chain 1, and then we're going to be kind of doing a repeat, but we'll just be working less stitches in between our decreases, because as we decrease those, we'll get less. So we'll start by doing a half double crochet 2 together, marking that first stitch, and then we're going to half double crochet 14 stitches, and then we'll half double crochet 2 together. Now after working 14 half double crochets, we will half double crochet 2 together, and then we're going to repeat that on the other side of this heel, where we will half double crochet 2 together, half double crochet 14, and half double crochet 2 together. And now for round 3, we're going to chain 1 and half double crochet 2 together. And then we will half double crochet 12 and half double crochet 2 together. And then we'll repeat that along the top for round 3. This is going to bring our stitch count down to 28 stitches. We've been decreasing 4 stitches per round. And now we have one last round to do for round 4. We'll chain 1 and half double crochet 2 together. And then we'll simply half double crochet in the next 10 stitches and half double crochet 2 together, and then repeat that on the other side. You can see that we're lessening that hole as we go, and we're going to be shaping for that heel. Now that we've worked all the way around, we can go ahead and join and then fasten off, leaving a long tail, because we're going to use our yarn needle to finish closing this. Now for this, we are going to flatten our fabric. So we have it flattened. If we were to turn it this way and we have that gap, we want to bring it together, but it's easier if we make that heel face us where all the edges are facing, and we're not trying to fight it the other way. So we have our toe down here. So we're smushing the top and the bottom with the decreases on each side. So now we're going to take our yarn needle and we're simply going to be going back and forth. You can really stitch this how you want. I'm just going to go back and forth between these stitches and we're just going to seam across to close. So we're just going through each stitch. They should have the same amount of stitches on the top as you do the bottom. And we'll just keep going back and forth to seam this closed. Now, once you seamed across, you can go ahead and see how that looks on the side and then weave in your end and fasten off. Now, the last thing we want to do is put on any accessories or like little trinkets if you want. I have these labels I'll be putting on with these small rivets I have to attach those like I did here. And then I found this burlap ribbon that I found worked great by using some rivets to go right through that burlap. It has like enough gap that you can just put it right through and then attach it to the side through the stocking. I bought a pack of rivets that comes in different colors and different sizes that I've linked in the pattern that helps finish this off really nicely so that it has a tag to hang. I frayed that on purpose. I pulled it apart a bit because I think it's really cute. And then I attached this. The other thing we can do is I found these on Amazon. And so if you wanted to place this as well when you hang it, you can hang it around your tab and then you can label whose stocking it is by writing on it with a Sharpie, or you can use a Cricut machine to do a name on it, or even just write a holiday message. It's really cute to have that as well. And now we have a beautifully textured stocking to enjoy all holiday season long. You can make these as gifts, make them for your whole family, make one for yourself, and fill it with fun trinkets for the holidays. Now, the other thing I like to do that I haven't done yet is I'll cut out a piece of cardboard. I'll put this on top of cardboard and trace it. I just don't happen to have any right now, waiting for an Amazon box to come. And then I'll cut out the piece of cardboard and put it inside here, and that will help it display quite nicely and really make those stitches pop. The other thing you can do is line it. If you're good at sewing, you can cut out the fabric. You can even use fabric glue if you want to create the shape of the stocking and then just insert into it and attach the top of it. And that way, if you want it lined so it would stretch less, if you were to put heavy things in here, that would be good for it as well. There's lots of things you can do in terms of colorways for these stockings. If you want to do different striping, you could do your puff stitch rows in one color and your single crochet rows in the other color. You could do lots of different color variations to make that customized as well. I hope you've really enjoyed this fun holiday tutorial and come back for more fun projects soon.